Yourself to those things. I don't know if you want to help yourself to those things, but they're there on the table for you to eat. Somebody will eat them. I guarantee you, if you don't want to eat your gefilte fish, someone will eat it. Not me, but somebody else will eat it. So, again, we have people who are with us right now. They're streaming with us. You can eat at home too if you're watching. So take a moment, enjoy that, pass that around. We're going to continue though. Make sure you have some grape juice or wine in your glass. Because as we tell the story, make sure you have some grape juice or wine. You need to have we're going to have 4 cups. But you need to make sure you have about 3 ounces or so of cup of drink every time. But make sure you got it filled up, because in a moment, we're going to recount the 10 plagues. So you need to have a little bit of wine or grape juice for that. Are we going to do let the people go? So tonight, as we recount the 10 plagues, a lot of us were thinking about the fact that over the last couple years, we experienced some very real plagues in our world. And beyond just the illness and the reality that we lost so many people from COVID, we actually had, of course, lots of other reactions to that and consequences to that. Of course, the most obvious one, as we already said, was the fact that we couldn't have a Seder together like we're doing right now. And so we figured out ways to get around that. We brought Seder meals to people. We delivered them last year. We had an online Seder. But again, this is very important, just to be together. And in a moment, we're going to recount the 10 plagues. And some of them were illnesses, some of them were physical illnesses, and some of them were natural occurrences or supernatural occurrences, but things that affect the atmosphere, things that affected their environment. And a lot of people talk about the ninth plague, which was the plague of darkness. And the weird thing about that is because that was like the penultimate plague, that should have been like pretty bad, right? It should have been almost as bad as the 10th plague, which of course is the death of the firstborn. Not children, by the way, very important. Death of the firstborn. It didn't say kids, it's firstborn everybody. So you'd think the ninth plague would have been pretty bad. And there are people who say, look, the ninth plague was darkness, and it wasn't just a darkness that blotted out the sun, though it's really important that it blotted out the sun because, of course, the Egyptians worshiped the sun. Ra, their sun god, was their most powerful god, and so by darkening out the sun god, it was essentially the Jewish people saying, and God saying, look, we're much more powerful. God is much more powerful than your God. But there's another interesting lesson, and again, one of the teachings from the Hasidic Rebbe's. The Torah says that on that plague, it wasn't just darkness, it wasn't just an eclipse. It was a darkness that was pervasive. A darkness like you could touch it. It was a darkness that meant, and the Torah literally says this, people couldn't see the people sitting next to them. They couldn't see anything around them. So that's not just an eclipse. And the rabbis teach us from that what was so bad about this plague is that people couldn't see each other. And of course, what does that mean for us? The fact that the worst thing that happens in our lives are when we can't see the people around us. We really can't see them. We can see them, but we really don't see them. We don't know what they're feeling. We don't know what they're thinking. We're not connected to them. And of course, during the pandemic, we were forced to not be able to see people live in person. The best we could see is them on Zoom. But we couldn't feel what they're feeling. We couldn't really be with them and see what was really going on. And that's one of the worst things that happens to human beings when they can't see each other, when they can't even see the person sitting next to them. So our job as human beings is to really try to see people and to try to really connect with people. And that's what Passover teaches us. This ninth plague was a horrible, horrible plague. And it's something that no one should ever have to live with, not being able to be seen. So we're going to say the 10 plagues now, and we take out a little bit from our cup. We diminish our cup a little bit because we teach ourselves that we don't celebrate when even our enemies suffer. So we take out a little bit from our cup, and we're going to say the 10 plagues in Hebrew and in English. We're going to repeat them on page 98. Page 98. That's good. Thank you, Wendy. My microphone was not on, but I was screaming anyways. All right, ready? Dam, blood. Sfardea, frogs. Kinim, lice. Arov, wild beasts. Dever, cattle plague. Shechin, boils. Barad, hail. Arbeh, locust. Choshech, darkness. Makat bechorot, the death of the firstborn. So again, as we said, these plagues, we counted these plagues. We know that the plagues were necessary because it was only after those plagues that Pharaoh finally let us go. Pharaoh, by the way, as the plagues are going, according to the Torah, towards the end, says, I'll let you go. And then every time he changes his mind. So there had to be another plague. So it was really, the first plagues Pharaoh didn't react to. But towards the end, Pharaoh does react to them. And he still doesn't let us go. So we're going to sing a song now, which is Let My People Go. And a lot of people know this song because it is part of American history. It was written by African Americans who were enslaved here in this country. And so we're going to sing Let My People Go, which is on page 99 in your Haggadahs. You can see Let My People Go. Page 99.
Okay, so where are the tables with the kids again? I have a very special thing for the kids to do. Kids, are you ready? You know how people are always telling you, shh, keep it down? Well, in this, there's one part of the song where I need the kids to yell, let my people go. So let's just practice that. On the count of 3, only the kids yell, let my people go. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Like
I'm
two
pretty
kids.
sure the Pharaoh did not hear that. We're going to try it again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I think the adults are going to have to help. When Israel was in Egypt land. Here it is. Ready? Let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Really loud. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Thus saith the Lord, where Moses said, super loud. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. No more shall they in bondage toil. Let me hear you. Let my people go. Let them come out with Egypt's spoil. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh. Very last time, here we go. Let my people go. Good job. Thank you, guys.
So now we have another song that we need everybody to help participate in, because if you turn to the next page in here, which is on page 104, it is Dayenu, which means it would have been enough. And there's so many things that God did for us to help get us out of Egypt and then take us through the wilderness. We're going to sing some of those right now. We're going to sing Dayenu on page 104. And we're going to do a couple of the verses. We're going to do Ilu Hotzianu, Mi Mitzrayim, taking us out of Egypt. And also we're going to do Natan Lanu et Shabbat, that God gave us the Shabbat, and that God gave us the Torah. So these are just some of the miracles that God gave us. And we say, Dayenu, it would have been enough for one of those things. But we got so many things.
Brought us out of Egypt, it would have been enough. If we'd not come so far in our efforts to break the planet, it would have been enough. If I had only won the lottery just once, it would have been enough. If I only had the patience required to let the dough rise on my back or anywhere, it would have been enough. If only I could have taken in all the outside cats, it would have been enough. If only the Russians had not invaded Ukraine, it would have been enough. If no one had ever slapped anyone in front of 1 billion people, it would have been enough. If only my garden was filled with just the intentional plants, it would have been enough. If only Passover wasn't canceled again because of East Coast COVID, it would have been enough. If only the internet had been more definitive on whether East Coast should have been capitalized in the previous stanza, it would have been enough. If only the right words had come out of everyone's mouths and pens and tweets, it would have been enough. If I only could have acknowledged I already have everything I need, it would have been enough. If only Elijah had finally come and written this poem for me, it would have been enough. If only we could move from never enough to just enough to it would be enough. It would be more than enough. It would be plenty. If only. Sit down there. World premiere.
It's perfect. That was the world premiere, that poem. It was.
Not the Dayenu part. That came before today.
We had heard that. Yeah, you're right. So if you turn with me to page 110, we have one of the things we do traditionally at Pesach is explain the different symbols on our plate. Now, 3 of them actually go back to the Torah and have been part of Pesach for thousands of years. Well, actually, the first we don't even have anymore, and that's the Pesach offering, the Passover Lamb. So we call the holiday Chag Pesach, the Chag of passing over, because again, it was the blood of that lamb and the sacrifice that reminds us that God passed over our homes on the night of Passover. And then, of course, the next thing is the matzah, the symbol of our liberation, which the Torah also commands us to eat. So in a moment when we actually say the blessing over eating matzah, we're fulfilling a biblical commandment. We're not just eating something, we're actually fulfilling a Torah mitzvah. And then the last thing that's also a mitzvah, that's a commandment, is maror, is the bitter herb. And the bitter herb is a representation of our bitterness, the bitterness of slavery. And we already had a symbol of the tears of slavery and the salt water and the karpas, the symbol of spring. Those are the other things on our plate. But we also have charoset, which is a symbol of the mortar that we made, because not only do we have to build the cities for the Egyptians, we also had to make our own building materials. That was one of the punishments that they put on us, was making our own building materials. So these are the symbols that we have. We're about to eat some of those symbols, and we'll say the blessing in just a moment. But another one of the Hasidic teachings I wanted to share with you tonight is this interesting teaching about the name of the holiday. Because we just mentioned, we call it Chag Pesach, the holiday of the Pesach, the Passover offering. We also call it Hag HaMatzot, the holiday of matzah. The Torah actually calls it Hag HaMatzot. We call it Hag HaPesach. Most of us don't call it Hag HaMatzot. Some people do, but most of us call it Hag Pesach. We call it that. And the Torah yet calls it Hag HaMatzot. All throughout the Torah, it's called the festival, the holiday of matzah. So why is this discrepancy? Why do we call it Pesach, but the Torah calls it the holiday of matzahs? So the interesting thing that the rabbis teach us is that we call it Pesach because we want to give God credit for it. Because God, how do we remember God at Pesach? By remembering the offering and the blood on the doors. That was God's miracle. But God in the Torah calls it Hag HaMatzot because that's what we did. We made the matzah and we left in a hurry and we showed our faith in God by saying we're not going to let this bread rise, we're just going to get out of here. So it was our example of our love for God and our following God by making matzah. So we give God credit by saying Pesach, and God gives us credit by calling it matzah. Because this is what happens when you truly love somebody, is that you give them credit. You don't need the credit, you can give the credit to the other person. So this is showing God's love for us and our love for God by the way we call it this holiday. So think about those names, the different names we have for this holiday. And we're going to say the blessing now over those things that we're going to eat. We're going to actually say the bracha over over the matzah. So get those things ready. Get your maror ready. Get your matzah ready. We're going to do one song before that, which is the song that we sing for finishing the magid, the telling of the story. So make sure you have your cup of wine, because we're going to drink our wine or grape juice in a moment. We're going to say the blessing. So get those things ready. On page 114, right before that, we must say these words at the Seder. Bechol dor vador chayav adam lirod et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mitzrayim. Every one of us in every generation has to see that we ourselves left Egypt. Not our ancestors, but we ourselves. So every Pesach, we're supposed to feel like we left Egypt. That's why we eat these foods. That's why we tell the story, so that you and I feel like we left Egypt, not just our ancestors. That this is our journey, our own personal journey. Not a story about people who lived a long time ago, but each one of us. And so think about that tonight. You didn't hear this story, you lived this story. So we're going to sing Betzet Yisrael, this Psalm 114 on page 120. You can find this song of freedom, the song that is in our Psalms that we sing to celebrate us leaving Egypt. Betzet Yisrael, page 120.
Betzet Yisrael mitzrayim et Yaakov me'am noes. Betzet Yisrael mitzrayim et Yaakov me'am noes. Eta yechodah lekodsha Yisrael min purato.
Turn to page 122. Please raise your Kiddush cup for the second cup, the cup of redemption, the cup for telling the story. Again, we thank you, God, ruler of the universe, who has redeemed us redeemed us and redeemed our ancestors from Egypt, who brought us to this night to eat matzah and maror. We thank you, God, for redemption. Baruch atah Adonai Gaal Yisrael. We say the Kiddush together on page 122.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen.
L'chaim, everyone. So now as we wash for the hamotzi, get ready for your matzah ready for the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu al netilat yadayim. And as we have a little matzah now, the blessing on page 124, two blessings, hamotzi and the blessing over eating matzah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu al achilat matzah. And please have some matzah now, everyone. Oh man, just like cardboard. Anyways, on page 126, people were laughing because they know how much I don't like matzah, and I really don't like matzah. And so now that I was doing Seders on television this year, they saw me eating matzah and pretending that I liked it, like an actor eating some food on TV that they really don't like. But anyways, we're now going to eat maror. I actually prefer eating maror. We take a little maror on page 126, the bitter herb, and some people have a tradition of eating it raw, or other people, you can dip it in your charoset, your symbol of the mortar, but it sweetens it up a little bit. But we're actually, again, performing a mitzvah, a commandment by doing this. So on page 126, the blessing over eating the Marorna, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu al achilat maror. And again, some people ask, why do we give a whole piece of maror, a whole piece of the horseradish? So that you can dip it into the haroset if you want to. Now on page 129, the last step before we eat is we have the Hillel sandwich, the korech. This is a step where we actually bring all the symbols together. So if you want to take some of your haroset, some of your bitter herb and your matzah, we eat this together to remember that Rabbi Hillel taught maybe we're supposed to eat all of the symbols, taste them all in one bite. So we make this sandwich up. There's no special blessing for this, but again, as we celebrate Pesach together, again, maybe the blessing is just in being here together. And now we're going to eat. We're going to give everyone a chance to eat, to come up, to serve yourself. There are soft drinks up here too, and we have soup coming around to everybody. So the soup is coming first, and then we're going to have everybody go up. The people who are watching us on Facebook right now, I don't know what to do but eat. I guess you can eat too if you're at home watching us. Take some time to eat, and then we'll be singing in a little bit. Get everybody singing. So make sure you have some sustenance while we're doing that.